Over the recent years, some Merlin parks throughout the UK have been known to have a lack of log flumes, more specifically Thorpe Park and Alton Towers, after the flumes there had been removed. The flume at Alton Towers being replaced by Wicker Man in 2018, and Loggers Leap at Thorpe Park being replaced by Hyperion in 2024. But one park stands out the most, Chessington Wild Adventures, because they have a log flume still operating, which doesn't seem to be very common throughout Merlin anymore. This ride is called Tiger Rock, or as you could call it now, Rock, because other than the massive tiger sculpture that you drop down into, nothing to do with the ride is about tigers, as all of the tigers that live in Chessington have either died or been taken away to other zoos, which is really challenging the park to make a good decision of what to do next. Anyway, it's already been almost a minute, so I better get into the full review of Tiger Rock at Chessington Wild Adventures. As I mentioned, I will be covering the full experience, so the first thing I will cover is the queue line. Sometimes I do find that the wait screen for the ride to be slightly inaccurate, sometimes in a good way and sometimes in a bad way, so if you're visiting the park soon, keep that in mind. After joining the queue, it usually moves reasonably fast, however there is a lack of theming. The ride passes under a bridge which you walk over, which adds a nice touch, but other than the music and the ride itself, the queue is usually quiet and dull. Not to mention one of the bins was overflowing on the ground when I visited, which doesn't line up with the park being half zoo, considering they'd probably want everything to be good for the environment. Now I know so far this sounds like a negative opinion on the ride, but don't worry, the queue obviously isn't the best part. If the queue was long enough, you could buy a snack or drink from the available vending machines. However, with them being towards the end of the queue, you probably wouldn't have time to eat or drink until you come off the ride. However, I assume it would be a cheaper alternative to the other food options around the rest of the park. Once you head into the station building, the atmosphere improves, with tiger sound effects and loud music, along with themed lights and walkways, yet again. More vending machines. It's almost like they want you to be munching on a chocolate bar while plummeting down 2 drops. Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen anyone order something from either 2 vending machine locations. Sometimes the station can be quite dark, and when you walk into the station for the first time, there are stairs you have to walk up to get to the other side of the platform to, obviously, ride the ride. They do have bright yellow strips, but they never seem to help, so yeah, be careful on the stairs. Now this ride can be quite unreliable, so if you're lucky enough you might get evacuated from the top of the ride, so if you have some sort of fear or heights, then you might want to keep that in mind. Now you board the ride, going left if your group is 3 or less people, and right if your group is 4 or more. Sometimes they might put 2 smaller groups in one boat, however that's not usually the case. The boats are to your right, so after the previous rider's exit, the assigned staff member should direct you to your boat. After sitting down, you'll notice you still have your bag with you, that's because it's a bags on ride. But don't wear a hat depending on how loose it is, because once I rode it and my dad lost his hat. I'm being serious, in the picture you could see his hat floating away into the distance. So once you finally get dispatched, the ride meanders around some bamboo. Did I seriously just say bamboo? Bamboo and trees, and under the tunnel obviously, but the main noise there is crying babies from far away and the boat hitting against the side of the trough. This ride could do with some music being added, some speakers around the area. You eventually find yourself in the front of the first hill before ascending up, and to be honest, this is the wettest drop on the ride. But my last ride I had on it was absolutely terrible. I was sitting at the front, and our boat must have had a massive hole in the bottom or something, because water was sploshing around at the front at ankle height, leaving me with wet socks for the rest of the day. But don't worry, that only happened to me one time, and the water that comes over the boat is limited. You slowly and quietly bob along forward into this ugly tunnel made out of corrugated metal, and there's not much theming in there either, just some audio, finally, and some lights. Then you make your way around some animal enclosures, which you'd be lucky to see any tigers, and if you do now, you should report it. It might be a wild one. So hopefully we are near the end of this video, because this is the longest script I've ever had to write. So if you could consider subscribing to the channel, it would be greatly appreciated. We're on the road to 2,000 subscribers. Make sure you go check out my shorts. No, not those ones, my YouTube shorts. I try to upload 2 every day. Anyway, back to the video. Eventually you're climbing up the tallest lift hill before you are floating around the slowest part of the ride. And also the tallest. You can literally see the Shard and the rest of London from up there. That's if it's not raining or misty, which is quite uncommon for the UK. The drop itself is okay, but guess what? Your shoes might get even more soaked, and other than the possible toddler trying to squirt you with the water guns, but miserably missing, that's pretty much the end of the ride. So once you get back to the station, your diabolical picture is waiting for you on display, but the thrill isn't over. You don't get hit from the boat behind.